Welcome to Talking Netflix, the podcast on Full Circle Cinema where we discuss Netflix originals. We're all here today. It's Rascal F, Kennedy, Mark Tan, James, Preston, Poole, the Hot Take Bonanza.
Yes, sir.
Dominic.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
It's totally
Dominic.
fine. You can just call me Dom if you want.
Today we're going to talk about Stranger Things 3. We'll talk about a plethora of things on Netflix, but today we're going to focus on Stranger Things 3 since that was the big release this month. I know we're running kind of late and we're kind of behind, but
several weeks behind.
We had to watch it and catch up, and we had to digest it. So
yeah, better late than never.
And more importantly, I think one of us hasn't actually watched it until very recently, so I guess we've been waiting for you, right, James?
Oh, man. Oh, y'all gonna do this to me? Alright, so not only did I not watch Season 3 until yesterday, I hadn't even seen Season 2 yet until just last week, so I kind of binged them all at once, and I loved it. I love Season 2, and I really, really loved Season 3.
And so we kind of have some differing opinions on Season 2, but it seems like everybody's on the same page for Season 3.
It's definitely better than Season 2, but I wouldn't say that's a massive, I wasn't a big fan of either of them. But yeah, it's funny, they're enjoyable, just not like anything special.
Oh, dang. Let's get into this. Rascal and Dom, I know y'all weren't huge fans of Season 2. What in particular did y'all not like about that season?
The only thing I can really give that season is that they did a lot of great work with the characters.
Right.
In terms of the actual stakes and the plotting and the pacing, everything was worse than Season 1. Because in my opinion, the threat of Season 2 isn't really something tangible. The stakes aren't really felt. And that problem is fixed in Season 3, but for the entirety of Season 2, you're just kind of waiting for the big threat to actually come.
And I want to interject about Season 2 is that something that was great about Season 1 is that we really got to know a lot about how Eleven interacted with the other kids. In Season 2, it seems like she's just kind of separate from everybody. And this is before even the controversial Episode 7, where the whole episode is just about her. For most of Season 2, she's just kind of separate. By the time she shows up near the end, it's more like, oh, you're just here out of contractual obligation. So something that is great about Season 3 is that they actually give her a great development again, like Season 1. So as somebody who really loved Eleven the first season and didn't really like her in the second one, I'm really glad that they brought her back to the great character that she was earlier.
Yeah, my problem with Season 2 is that it just drags. It feels really clumpy, like the episode where she goes off and she meets her sister and she finds out about her mom and all these other things. It just seems like the episode was necessary, but it felt like they could have put that elsewhere. Like it kind of dragged out the season. And the thing is, it's only one more episode than Season 3, but I feel like that really dragged it out. And you're right, it is very character driven and we do learn a lot about Eleven, but at the same time, it just feels really like it was everywhere. While Dom is right, with the Mind Flayer, we don't exactly see the Mind Flayer as a full-blown threat. It's more like I'm here to take over Will's body and bring Will back to the Upside Down. It doesn't really seem like the Mind Flayer is trying to take over how it is in Season 3. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because Season 3 is pretty much like apocalyptic stakes, and so you're immediately more invested in what's going on. And so I feel like showing the two seasons side by side, it really shows just how empty Season 2 feels.
Yeah, as far as the stakes and things like that goes, it's very character driven though. We do learn a lot about certain characters, and I feel like the insertion of Billy and Max into Season 2 kind of helped carry it because it's new characters. We have to learn about them as well, but the whole thing about 11, it just, I don't know, for me it just dragged it.
Yeah, and actually, I agree with Max and Billy actually being a very, very good thing about Season 2, because Max is kind of the catalyst for the kids having to mature a little bit. And what I've loved about the 3 seasons so far is that you can really see the growth in not only these characters, but the kids who are portraying them as well.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with everything y'all have said about Season 2. I loved Season 2. I thought it was fantastic. I think I might like it just as much as Season 3. But it definitely lacked that strong structure, and there wasn't that clearly defined antagonist. I mean, really the only big threat we saw, because the Mind Flayer never really made an appearance, the only real threat that we saw was basically just dog versions of a threat we had seen before. And I felt like certain characters definitely got sidelined, like Mike in particular.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, he was just almost absent entirely from this season. But I feel like with season 3, they managed to take my favorite part of season 2, which was that great character development, that expanding of the cast. You know how season 2 added the characters of Billy and Max. I feel like season 3 adds Robin. You get the expansion of Lucas's sister into a full-blown main character. I think it just took that character development and put it in a tighter narrative with more stakes.
Can we talk about Robin for a
please.
second?
Yeah, she was awesome.
Oh, man.
Robin is definitely something that was needed and necessary for Stranger Things, in my personal opinion.
Despite the fact that she is the first openly LGBT character on the show, she just added this air of comedy and snark and fun to things that's been missing since season 1, really.
Yeah, definitely. She was, like, we can always count on the kids to be comic relief and be there and be funny, but Robin really upped the ante with that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and what's great about Robin is that the whole thing about her being an LGBT character, that only comes up near the end of the season.
Yeah, her defining trait isn't that she's gay.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's if anything, that fact was kind of tossed out as a conclusion to Steve's arc, showing him that he doesn't need a girlfriend or a romantic partner. He more just needs to be an adult and have meaningful relationships and friendships with people.
Yeah, and we can definitely talk about Steve, because I feel like also one thing that we left out about season 2 was that Steve's character development in season 2 was pretty cool.
It was one of the best.
It was a pretty cool thing
season
to watch.
Yeah, to see Steve start out as a bully in season 1, then have those mean layers go away little by little in season 2, then in season 3 just being a straight up good character, like that is what I would say is like great character development for the show. And honestly, with season 2 and with season 3, like, Steve is now one of my favorite characters.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I liked his character development, and I also liked how, Billy's this big jerk. He's a really mean guy, and then at the very end, he actually goes out and shows Max, that he loves her, that he cares about his sister, something that, you can tell Max cared about her brother, but you couldn't really sense that from Billy until, like, the very, very end of the episode, of the I guess it was, like, the last episode?
Yeah, when he's fighting the Mind Flayer.
Yeah.
Yeah, the show's really good at redemption arcs. That's definitely one of the things it excels in. But what did you guys think of Hopper this season? Because I know that's kind of a controversial thing.
Hopper is definitely something that is going to be on our brains until we see what happened in season 4, because I know everybody has mixed emotions about Hopper in that season, but ultimately I feel like with Hopper we never really got a closure with Hopper. That's what I was trying to say. I don't feel like we got any meaningful closure with Hopper other than his letter to 11 at the very end.
Right, are we going into spoilers or not?
Let's just talk non-spoilers for a little longer, and then we can go deep into spoilers. Like, I wanted to say a couple things about Hopper for this season. It's weird that I've been seeing a lot of negative opinions towards how Hopper's been extremely overprotective. Because it's not even something we haven't seen before. In season 2, where he was protecting 11 by basically keeping her away from the outside, that's kind of what we see in season 3. That's just basically an extension, only this time it involves Mike.
I think my problem with Hopper this season, because I agree with you, it didn't seem out of character. I think the problem is we just didn't spend as much time with Hopper, and it felt like he was a little more surface level than he's been in past seasons.
Well, yeah, because normally it's supposed to be like, oh, it's a man with a gruff exterior but a heart of gold, and I didn't really see much gold in that heart this season. He just kind of seemed like a rageaholic.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, the thing that people have to realize is, Hopper had a daughter before, 11 started living with him, before he started taking care of 11.
Right, and I think, honestly, my complaints with Hopper's character in this season don't stem from his relationship with 11 or even the stuff with Mike. It's how he interacts with Joyce.
Yeah, I would agree with that a little bit. It's weird because it's like you see the two of them and most of their scenes play just like a bad couple, and it just feels kind of weird to see Hopper and Joyce in that position because it felt kind of out of character for me, whereas that I didn't really feel that way about their characters in the last two.
Yeah, you could tell that they cared about each other in the first 2 seasons, and you can still see that in season 3, but it's very hard.
I felt like with Joyce and Hopper's relationship in this season, Hopper just seemed kind of annoyed and angry for no reason, and it also seemed like they were acting as if Hopper and Joyce had been doing this will they, won't they thing for longer than they had, because they played it off like they were deeper into the relationship than they were, and I was like, come on, they haven't even been on a date yet.
Well, not for a lack of trying. Enzo's.
Yeah, true.
While we're on, I know we talked about characters being added on. I don't mean to go off track here, but can we talk about Alexi for a few seconds?
Sure, we can definitely talk about
man.
Alexi.
He was alright. I mean...
What? Oh, man, no. Alexi was... You know what? I can put Alexi for me, personally, I can put Alexi in the same space that I can put Robin in. Not in the same context.
Really?
Yes.
No, I'm with you.
Can.
I'm with you, totally.
I definitely can.
Like, don't get me wrong, I liked his character, I just didn't feel like they did all that much with him. They did a lot with Robin, but Alexi just kinda...
I don't feel like there was much to do with Alexi.
Right.
But what they did with Alexi was enough. It was what they were supposed to do with Alexi. Because you feel for the guy, we're not going to go into spoilers yet, but, you feel for the guy and you kind of just want him to win.
Well, see, it's like the moment I started to feel that way towards him, I can't go into that at the moment. I don't know, it just felt really abrupt, the way that they ended that subplot.
I can agree with that, but I still feel like he had a pivotal point, especially for Hopper and Joyce.
He's definitely a pivotal point in terms of how it's like by having Alexi with Joyce and Hopper for a lot of the season, we basically see the interaction between Hopper and Joyce basically from his point of view. I think the reason why you were really into Alexi is basically like the audience avatar. He's just kind of in there for the fun of it, and he's just kind of amused by everything.
He's more of a blank slate than Martin in Too Old to Die Young. He's just kind of there.
All right, now I agree with Rascal on Alexi, but and I agree with you too, Mark. But I just think I like Alexi just because he's this goofy, always smiling, always getting into some trouble Russian dude, and I feel like in a series where every single one of the Russians is a scary villain, you need that kind of like, all right, maybe they're not all so bad kind of thing.
Well, no, and I totally agree.
Definitely.
I just think they could have done a lot more with him than they did.
It's one thing that Alexei is not the evil Russian like everybody else, but it's like he seems to go the complete opposite direction. It's like there's no black and white in terms of how it depicts the Russians, which I guess it makes sense because this is still an American story, and of course, American
it's
depiction
more
of
of an
Russians.
80s homage, just the decade that brought you Red Dawn, for Christ's sake.
Of course,
Like,
yeah.
Russians were the bad guy in everything, so it's really more of just like, hey, tribute to that, than, any commentary on the actual country of Russia.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that's more so what it was. Which makes it feel more 80s than anything is the fact that this season in general focuses so much on the Russians and being the bad guys and the propaganda being thrown around about the Red Army, and there was a lot of that in this season. Whenever you think of the 80s, for me, I think of Cola and I think of Russian, honestly. Because they were the bad guys.
Not since?
They were the bad guys in everything.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Nah, not really. But I more so think of Russians. Only because they were the bad guys. They were always the bad guys. Like you said, that's the decade that brought us the Red Dawn. So for me, whenever I think of the 80s and I think of villains in the 80s, it was definitely Russians.
Yeah, did Rocky IV come out in the 80s?
It was 1985.
Okay, yeah.
The same year as the events of Stranger Things Season 3.
Oh, wow. Damn, nice connection.
I like the fact that they included the Russians in there, but I will say that they were kind of my least favorite part of this season, other than Alexi, of course.
Yeah, definitely. I'll say that they were a nice second-hand antagonist to the Mind Flayer, but, it was kind of expected. Like, there was nothing ooh-ah about adding the Russians, but it was also necessary given the time period.
See, I feel like they just needed an excuse to shoehorn more scientists so that things can go wrong. Because it doesn't matter whether they're American scientists or Russian scientists, they're still scientists doing evil experiments in this small town. And so I feel like that whole part of this season really fell flat for me. Just because it really was more of the same, but much cheesier and schlockier, which made it more fun to watch, but it wasn't really riveting.
Mm-hmm.
I'd agree with that.
We can talk about this more in our spoiler section, but I feel like the Russians definitely played second fiddle to a certain other antagonist who we'll talk about later. But I also feel like some of their stuff might have been setting up for a potential season 4.
Oh, I'm certain this is going to get a season 4.
Yeah, given how popular the show has been so far, it really would not surprise me if they made a season 4.
I think this goes 2 more seasons, and then Netflix starts to focus and put more money and potential towards another series, which I can think of 2 series which they could put that same money and effort and marketing towards. You know what? 3 then, if we're going to add Dark to this list. Yes.
Yeah, they're only getting 1 more season though, so...
Yeah, I can think... Well, I mean, yeah, if Dark, and then Mark knows what I'm going to say here.
The Society.
And then The Order. Those 3 shows are definitely something that Netflix could put the same focus and marketing into that they're doing for Stranger Things. But, I mean, I guess we just have to see if the numbers pick up, because I know Stranger Things was popular whenever it first came out, but it took a couple of months for the show to gain traction. And then they finally decided to go all in on it and kind of make it their big thing.
Wait, are you sure that it took a couple months to gain traction? Because I remember when it first came out, a ton of people at my school were going crazy over it.
Oh, well, I'm probably... I probably got a couple of years on.
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah, I know that it was popular whenever it first came out, but the kind of pickup that it had over the next few months that it was out, it kind of got pretty crazy. That's whenever they started dropping the merchandise and stuff.
Yeah, Eggo Waffle sponsorships.
Can I just say the amount of merchandise released this season has been crazy. I can't even be mad at it because it's brilliant marketing. Before I even watched this season, all I thought about was, I gotta watch Stranger Things now.
I mean, it kind of has to be because it's been 2 years since the last season.
Yeah, they had to come out with a lot of stuff. And, I mean, I personally felt like this season was going to be really, really bad because of the amount of marketing that they were doing, although they were trying to cover up for something.
Right.
But they really came through. They came through, and it was crazy. I'm happy that I was wrong.
I mean, yeah, honestly, besides the characters, I think the best thing the show has going for it is the production design, and they kind of have to do a ton of marketing to make their money back for making that whole mall from scratch, because that's a really, really meticulously put together set. They did a fantastic job with it.
I got definite Dawn of the Dead vibes from the mall, and I think that's why I love this season so much.
Yeah, I think they found a mall, an actual mall, and they actually just built upon that. So it's not like they had to build it from scratch, but still it's really impressive to see it's still intact.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very 80s. From the Burger King to the Gap.
To the Claire's with the old logo.
Yeah, I want to say that caught my eye more than anything else about the show. All the different sets and different things that they had inside the mall. That was really, and then the bus too. We hadn't seen those kids on a bus yet. You know what I mean? It was a lot of progress that happened in Hawkins over the couple of years that we didn't see anything going on.
Yeah, they really have done a good job this season making Hawkins feel a lot more like a character than it did in the past couple seasons.
Because most of it was just broken down downtown and, the woods. And that was pretty much all we saw. And now it looks like almost like it's one of the major cities in Indiana.
All right, so I guess it's time for us to go into our spoiler section. You guys have been kind of holding back on certain things, so now's the time to let it out.
Yeah, if you haven't seen Stranger Things Season 3 yet and you don't want it to be spoiled, you can cut off the podcast now.
So is Hopper alive, or...?
Hopper...
I don't know how he could survive that. That's the thing. If he is alive, I'd be pretty disappointed because it would feel like a cop-out, no pun intended.
I want to say that he's alive, only because whenever everything explodes, it just kind of feels like he went to the upside down. And I feel like at the very end, it kind of leaves a lot open.
That's very true.
Whenever they're in the prison in Russia and they kind of, not the American, grab the other guy, that could be two people. That could be Hopper, or it could be the Doctor from season 2.
It could be the Doctor from season 2. I feel like there was also, there's all the characters are Americans except for like Alexei, so it could be a variety of people. Could it be Bob?
I doubt it.
Yeah, no, Bob's toast. That would be cool, but unfortunately, Bob is toast.
Come on, Rascal, let me have this.
Bob was the best part of season 2, hands down.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Bob was season 2's Robin.
For sure.
The only other thing I can think about Hopper, well, for it to be Hopper, that would mean that Hopper went to the Upside Down, and then that they opened up the gate on the other side and Hopper walked through. And that would be my only indication as to how they got the Demogorgon that they fed the prisoner to.
Mm-hmm. You see, my interpretation of that ending scene is that they kind of made the Demogorgon that they used. Like it was some kind of a experiment that they created.
Like weaponized Demogorgons that they can unleash on third world countries.
Yeah.
Imagine if that's the direction
honestly,
season 4
that would
goes.
make sense. Very, very interesting. Weird, but interesting.
Yeah, and I feel like the show, for a show called Stranger Things, they really do need to get stranger, because at this point it is feeling kind of tired, kind of familiar, and I want to see them shake up the formula a lot in the next season. Because as enjoyable as this past one was, nothing about it really felt novel or new, other than the new characters, and those were all great. The new things about this season were the best parts. Even just, I loved the Mind Flayer as an antagonist, and I loved the effects of the bodies just melting. I'm a sucker for Cronenberg, and this reminded me a lot of like a cheaper CG version of what he would do.
Oh, totally. I give this season a lot of passes in terms of not inventing much on the formula, because we've been building towards the Mind Flayer for about 3 seasons now, so we had to get there and complete that arc. But I'm interested to see what they would do in the next couple seasons. I think whatever they do in the next season, I think Billy proves that they need a human villain.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
Because that dude had presence.
Oh yeah, I did not care about Billy at all in season 2, but the second he got possessed by the Mind Flayer, it was on. Mm-hmm. That dude was so much fun to watch. Every line he had was menacing.
Very
my
rapey.
only problem...
Yeah, definitely.
Ooh,
even more than
yeah, he was, for sure.
Like, makes my skin crawl, Jesus.
Yeah, it's like with season 2, it's like, you saw him interacting with Mike's mom, and it's like, oh, what are they going to do later on with season 3? And it's like, it's somehow even more creepy now that he's possessed by the Mind Flayer.
Yeah, he definitely was a great villain. He was really good. I want to say that he made the Mind Flayer pop.
Oh, yeah. Because he was scarier and more sympathetic at the same time, and I really got to give props to, I'm guessing the Duffer Brothers are the ones who made that call, but it was a very, very good call.
He reminded me of a less sickening Ted Bundy, which was really creepy.
Very, very true.
It was extremely creepy.
And it's not just because a lot of people have already compared Dacre Montgomery to Zac Efron, right?
No, I haven't.
I never drew that parallel.
But they do look alike.
I haven't either.
Yeah,
just more
a
like,
little bit,
it's like,
a little bit.
Okay, it's like, I guess.
Yeah. They favor each other. I won't say that they look alike, but they do favor each other. It's the beard mustache thing, man. Because Zac Efron shaves his whole face, they don't look alike. But whenever they both get facial hair, I can see the comparisons being drawn.
Neither of them can grow facial hair very well. I will say that.
It's very scrappy.
Yeah. You know which element of this season I ended up liking a lot more than I thought I would? I ended up really caring for the Mike and Elle romance this time around.
Yeah, because it's very much just him trying to navigate the minefields and the confusion of his first ever relationship. And I feel like that's something pretty much everyone can relate to. It's pretty easy for them to make that subplot relatable and resonate with a lot of people.
100%.
Yeah.
It definitely, as these kids get older, they get more relatable, in my opinion. And it was really charming to see Mike and Elle go through the trials and tribulations of a first love.
It's very interesting. It was also interesting to see how Max threw herself in there, and they acted more like adults in a weird way, and they still acted like kids.
They're teenagers.
Yeah, it was more like Elle was upset at her boyfriend, and Max kind of jumps in, and yeah, it was very, very relatable. Odd, but relatable.
Even the
Yeah,
part
I
where,
loved Dustin in this season.
Yes.
yeah, even
Oh god,
like even the part where Mike just goes on a rant about how women are basically a different species. It's like, yeah, he on the surface, like, yeah, that's kind of mean to say, but it's like he's also very new to this relationship thing, so it's like it makes sense for him to just go on a rant like this, and it's like that was the part where like that felt relatable to me.
Well, the show also made a pretty big point of like, hey, let's not forget that sexism was prevalent in the 80s, which wasn't that long ago. And I mean, they really went, it's the most overt in the Nancy subplot, which I actually really like what they did there. Especially the whole investigation with the old lady eating the fertilizer. It was just a very interesting way to get that character wrapped up in the conflict. They found pretty seamless ways to bring all of the old characters back into this new conflict and not make it feel forced.
So I think I'm going to have to drop my first hot take of the podcast.
Uh-oh.
I didn't care for any of the Nancy and Jonathan storyline. I appreciated that they did kind of show what the environment was like, but I found it so dull. It slowed down everything for me.
You said this was a hot take. This is actually the exact take I have, because I also found the Nancy and John stuff kind of boring to watch, even though like I do like that they're not forced into it. The actual plotline that they have with the old lady and the fertilizer, like, that is interesting. But I think the whole angle with Nancy facing problems in the workplace, particularly with, I think, Jake Busey's character, it's like, that stuff just felt very trite, and it didn't really go into newer ground in terms of, like, exploring, like, toxicity in the workplace.
There were moments where it did kind of work for me, particularly Nancy's conversation with her mom. But other than that, it didn't feel like it was... It felt like they repeated the same scene over and over again. And it also felt as though they weren't giving us any new information with this subplot. We saw at the very beginning of the season exactly what the Russians were doing. We knew what was going on, so... I didn't really feel that invested in either Nancy or Jonathan enough that I was okay with having the same information being given to me again.
Yeah, no, I get that.
I totally get that too, but...
I enjoyed it, but like you said, it was kind of the same information over and over again. Their story is really repetitive, but I mean, how can you make that any different than it already is? It's kind of a will they, won't they, okay they will, okay they won't, okay they will thing. Like you can't go any further with Jonathan and Nancy than you already have, other than the sexism that was thrown into her part of the story, and Jonathan kind of trying to protect her from that, and then not trying to protect her from that to protect himself, and then going full out and being like, you know what, Nancy, I do believe you. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing that you can really do with Nancy and Jonathan other than what you've already done. That's just kind of Mike's sister and Will's brother for now.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, I agree too.
Yep.
I think the biggest thing, though, the reason why I liked a good portion of that subplot, because I do agree that a lot of the interactions between Nancy and Jonathan were very repetitive and fell flat, but what I liked was that it established pretty early on a lot of the threat of the Mind Flayer. And seeing it first occur to rats, you know, where they're kind of just digging through fertilizer and then bursting into goop and going down in the sewer, your mind just kind of runs wild with these possibilities, like, oh god, is that going to happen to a person? And for me, I just found that really interesting. I loved what it did to set up the threat and the monster this season. But yeah, their character interactions were hella flat.
For sure, yeah, it was definitely effective on that ground, most definitely.
Also, I feel like Will... he wasn't put on the back burner, per se, but he wasn't as in the forefront as he should have been, given that he was the one who could detect the Mind Flayer.
Yeah, it seemed like...
You're right.
Yeah, it seemed like all that Will really did during this season was two things. One of them was to detect the Mind Flayer. The other thing was basically serve as basically the one kid in the group that doesn't really want to grow up and have relationships. He seems to be just want to go back to the good old days. But as far as like the plot, like yeah, like there's not much to Will this time around, unlike in season 2 where like he really felt like a full-fledged character.
Yeah, I feel like if season 2 was totally Will's season, so I feel like they really just used up all that they had for Will in the plot and couldn't figure out a way to really bring him in without forcing it in season 3.
Yeah, is Will gay?
You know what? That's a very interesting question that has been posed.
Yeah.
There are some instances in season 3 where you feel that way, but then at the same time you kind of feel like he's just...
And there's that one line from Mike where he says like, oh, you're not into girls, but it wasn't clear if that meant he liked guys or if he just wasn't into relationships like now because he's still like a kid. He's the one who doesn't really want to mature beyond how he was earlier.
That's how I interpreted it.
Like, that's definitely what I was thinking, but also jorts.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, I'll give you
Like,
jorts.
he's wearing jorts in every scene, dude.
Don't they all wear jorts, though?
Yeah, I think that was the
The
style.
scariest thing in this season.
Once we all meet up in person, I'm gonna wear jorts.
Oh,
boy.
you better
I'm
not.
definitely
Just as
wearing
scary.
jorts.
Well, if you're wearing jorts, I'm wearing Nike shorts, like booty shorts. I'm going even shorter.
Whoa.
Might as well be a Speedo.
I feel like they really were kind of being cowards with that Will stuff by not sort of confirming or denying.
Yeah, because definitely whenever he told him that he didn't like girls, Will could have spoke up for himself and been like, he could have said something hinting towards the fact that he was either gay or that he did like girls, that he's just not into that yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like he said that, and then the whole, everything went blank for like 5 seconds, and then they went somewhere else with it.
I wouldn't think it would be an issue if this show didn't kind of pair everyone off into relationships and focus on who's into who. So it makes like the absence of any sort of confirmation as to what Will's feel is feel a little weird.
Yeah, I think the only pairing that isn't romantic is the one with Dustin and Erica for most of it. Even still, Dustin has a girl too in this one, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Look
And I feel like...
around.
Oh, God.
That was my favorite part of the season by far.
Oh yeah, any problems
Yeah.
this season had, which I didn't think there was many problems to begin with, were all kind of eliminated just by that great never-ending story sing-along.
That had to be one of the funniest things ever, especially because she kind of clamped on Dustin at the beginning of it and was just kind of like, if you're not going to sing it, I'm not helping you, man.
And I love
And then
how
Dustin-
they don't cut it, they don't edit it, they just let it play out.
Yeah, and at first it just feels kind of cringy, like, oh god, are they really going to play this? But then the longer it goes on, it's like, it becomes funny again. It's like, what is going on? And it keeps cutting to the other people involved, including, like, Hopper, who totally could have said, like, guys, stop it, give us the code already.
But they're just in awe. They can harmonize so well.
They can sing so good. I can't even... It was nice.
The easiest
I
way to
can't
give
lie.
two people chemistry is to let them harmonize well.
I wonder if we're going to get more of her in season 4.
Oh, I hope so.
Yeah, I hope. It doesn't seem like she's going to be in it, because she seems like one of those characters that's just kind of there just for the joke. But I also really...
Yeah,
honestly,
honestly, for a while I thought Dustin...
I honestly really would like to see her more in the next season.
If only because she helps flesh out Dustin even more. Maybe once he starts feeling accepted, he'll come out of his shell and really become the genius he was meant to be.
I think they could do a lot of really interesting stuff with Dustin and his girlfriend next season, especially considering that 11 and Mike are also long distance.
Oh, yeah.
So I feel like you could definitely have kind of like a bro down of sorts between Dustin and Mike.
But that's also something that's going to be very interesting in season 4 is everybody's separated now.
Mm-hmm.
So now you have to create a threat big enough for everybody to come together, a reason for everybody to come together. Joyce and Mrs. Wheeler to get the kids together. Season 4 has to come with a lot of things that make sense.
Yeah.
Because if they don't make sense, then the whole entire season's going to fall flat.
Because I don't see a way they can do it without it being forced.
Well,
unless it's like Christmas.
That would be great. My idea, and I just thought of this just now, is the only thing I think could unite the gang back together is to have one of them figure out that Hopper might still be alive, and then that could kind of be the quest for the season, is getting them all back together.
To save
Which
Hopper.
is why I think Hopper's alive. I do think that that's the sole reason that they kept Hopper alive, is because that's the only thing that can bring everybody together. Other than holiday or something where everybody meets up and the whole gang is together. But other than that, it would have to be Hopper.
For sure. I also think Hopper could make for a very interesting kind of, not of his own accord, if they use some Russian technology on him, he could be an interesting, almost Billy-style villain for the season.
Oh, like Cyborg Hop? That would be just one big Terminator homage.
That's the one thing we haven't gone into yet. We haven't gone into, like, the 80s, like, cyborg stuff yet.
I mean, if there's any time they can do it, yeah, I guess season 4 will be it.
That's true. That's very, very true. Man, I just want season 4 to end with a big thing of text coming on the screen saying, everybody go watch Hellboy 2019.
I'm not going to. Del Toro should have been able to finish his trilogy, and I am determined to never watch that.
Look. Rascal can attest to this. You need to watch Hellboy.
You do need to watch Hellboy. It's totally off topic, but you need to watch Hellboy.
It's so good.
Like, what else is coming out on Netflix soon that we should get everybody to watch for our next podcast?
I haven't really looked into that yet. I should probably look that up right now.
Yeah, same here. I'm pulling it up.
I'm pulling it up too.
I'm pulling it up free.
Yeah, we're also pulling it up.
We're all just gonna be on our phones in the middle of this pod.
It's called research.
This is how we end every podcast. You're just all doing research.
Okay, I got one. Dark Crystal.
Oh, that's right.
Yes, Dark Crystal. Yes. You're right.
That's the big thing coming.
Oh man. Yeah.
I think we're gonna have to cover.
So is that what we're talking about next?
I think that just took over the whole podcast next season.
Yep.
Yeah, because
the question is though, should we only set up like one thing to watch and talk about, or should we do like a series of things? Because I think maybe if we get like 3 shows or movies to talk about, it'll give us plenty to fill an episode with.
Yeah, it depends. If it's like a smaller movie, I think we can just kind of cram it into one thing. But if it's like a show like Stranger Things or Dark Crystal, I think we could do well enough just covering that only.
Okay.
All right, Rascal. Well, do you want to sign us off?
I really didn't. I did not think about what to sign off with.
Okay. Sound off. 1, 2. I can't hear you. 3, 4.
All right, bye guys.
Have a fantastic time.
Thank you guys for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed our commentary on Stranger Things 3 and our goofiness all throughout this. I hope we didn't scare you away. We're looking forward to hearing from you guys and you guys hearing from us next time. Signing off the team.